In this video, we are going to look at the Quick Selection tool and the Levels Adjustment layer. The shortcut for the Quick Selection tool is W again. And remember what we said, you can set the Photoshop to toggle or to cycle through these tools by pressing the same shortcut, so in this case W, multiple times. So the second tool in this slot is the Quick Selection tool. Quick Selection tool is basically a brush. So don't confuse it with this red circle, which is there just to show you where my cursor is. It's a highlighter to show you where the cursor is. So this gray circle is the actual brush. To make the brush bigger or smaller, you can use the bracket keys on the keyboard. And then you simply draw over an area that you want to select. So like this. And then to add to the selection, you just keep painting like this. And then if we zoom in, let's see. Okay, you can see that the Quick Selection tool has missed a little bit of this area. So if I make my brush smaller, like this, I can just paint in the remaining bits, like this. Okay, and then if I want to take away from an area, I press the Option key and then I draw like this. So now that I have my selection, I can go to the adjustments and create a levels adjustment layer. Before we make any adjustments, let's go to this second file with the gray patches so that I can try to explain to you how the levels work. Okay, so we have three sliders here. And this is a histogram, really. We will see it again in other images. So if we go back, see that we have a histogram, and this is basically a graph that tries to show you roughly what the distribution of the tones in your image looks like. So if we go back to this image, then this slider represents the shadows or the blacks. This one, it represents the midtones, and this one represents the highlights. So if I move this slider in, you can see that, for example, if I move this black slider from this patch 2 places to the right, like this, then what I'm basically saying to Photoshop, okay, can you make this patch this black color? I can do the same thing on the opposite side. So if I take the white and then move it, let's say 3 swatches to the left, like this, then this swatch becomes the new white. If I take the midtones and then move them this way, then maybe this patch becomes the new mid-gray. If I move it the other way, then the second patch becomes this mid-gray. And so what I can do this way is I can, for example, increase the contrast like this by moving the blacks in a bit and the whites in a bit. So the contrast increases because the tonal range gets squashed. Another thing I can do, so notice that you have these 3 sliders here and 2 additional sliders on the bottom. So if I move this slider in, then I'm going to make the maximum white. So this is the maximum white inside of this file. I can make it darker, so it becomes this gray or this gray here. So this slider makes the white brighter, but this one can also make it darker if you like. And the same applies to the black. So if I move this one in, then the maximum black inside of this image becomes something like this gray. So this slider will darken the blacks, and this can lighten the blacks. I can also make color corrections using levels. So if you go to this drop down and go into the red channel, so if I move this way, I'm going to make the whole thing more red. If I move the opposite way, I will make it more cyan, which is the opposite of red. If I go into the green channel, then this way I make it more green. The other way I make it more magenta. If I go to the blue channel, then this makes it more blue, or this makes it more yellow. Okay, so now if we go back to this image, we have made our selection, and now we can maybe increase the contrast of these bottles a little bit, like this. And then if we go into the red channel, maybe we can make them a little bit more red, like this. And then to preview what we've done, you can click onto this eye icon. So this turns it on and off. Or, as we said, you can turn the adjustment layer on and off, like this, or option click onto the background. If we had multiple layers in this file, then this would turn off all the other layers except for the background layer. Okay, let's try to do something similar with another image. So to select this grass, again, I will just paint over it like this. Because there is a very clear line going around the grass, then the tool works really well. It's quite easy for it to make this selection. And then we can go to the adjustments, levels, and then maybe we can darken the grass and maybe increase the contrast a little bit. And if we go into the green channel, maybe we can tweak the color like this. So we have the before and after. I can try to do the same with the sky. So click, hold, and drag. And then in the places where the selection has gone over the edge of this wall, for example, so maybe I can use a smaller brush like this. And then with the Alt key, I can just paint in the areas that I don't want to be selected. Maybe I can use even a little bit smaller brush, like this, and like this. I can take away from the selection, so option and then paint over this area. And paint this bit in again. And I may need to use a very small brush for this. Like this. And then if I move over to this side, I can, so option and paint, because I want to select the sky, I want to now take away these chimneys away from the selection. I wanted to subtract them from the selection. And maybe this bit of wall as well. So I click on the option key and paint. And then looking at these buildings, so I don't want them to be selected, so I'm going to paint over them too. And then also these three tops and this bit. And maybe this bit. And maybe I can add this one. Like that. And then when I refine my selection, again, I can go to the adjustments, levels, and then maybe I can darken the sky a little bit. And if I go into, let's say, the blue channel, maybe I can make this a little bit less blue, like this. This is the before and after. And let's have a look at another example. So this file, what I can do before making a selection is if I make my brush a little bit bigger, before making a selection, I can press and hold the Alt key and paint over the areas that I don't want to select. So press and hold the Alt key, and then I just drag like this. And this is basically telling Photoshop that it shouldn't select these areas. Like this, and like this. And now when I use the quick selection tool, it should make it easier to select. Photoshop should already know that I don't want to go into this area. Like this. And then I will select the rest in the middle. And then Option and paint here to deselect this bit. And maybe with a smaller brush, I can deselect this bit as well. So Option and then paint again to refine this selection. And add a little bit here. Okay, so now that the selection is done, I can go to the adjustments, levels, and then again, maybe increase the contrast a little bit, like this. And maybe go into the red channel and make this a little bit more red, like this. So this is the before and after. Okay, so the selections in these examples may have not been perfect, but still, it's not so important for now because I just want to show you how each one of these tools works and what their strong points are. Later on, we will be able to combine them and in this way develop a very fast workflow, which can be really important, for example, if you have a large project to edit and a deadline to meet.